When you're on a ship with no TVs, phones, and most importantly, no porn, you have to turn to your other crewmates for entertainment. Get your mind out of the gutter, you pervert. I didn't mean that when I said entertainment. When you have a small, tight knit crew like the Straw Hats, all members become really close to each other because they have no other choice but to talk and interact with each other on a daily basis. In doing so, they become well aware of each other's goals and ambitions. In this video, I'll go over what each of the Straw Hats want to do outside of their main ambition, and how that impacts our view of these characters, and how you too can make elegant theories about One Piece characters using this information. Luffy, friendship. We all know that Luffy's ultimate goal is to become the Pirate King. My guess is that he will look at Laugh Tale, turn around to Sanji, and ask him to make food because the Laugh Tale is too much reading for him to give a shit. He obviously gained his ambition of becoming the Pirate King by listening to stories from Shanks and the others, but I think the most important lesson he learned from watching Shanks is to have a crew that he can go to hell and back for. From the very start of getting Zoro off that marine base, he has been very trusting of his crewmates, even though he doesn't know anything about them. Except for maybe Usopp because of Yasopp's stories. A lot of this is because Luffy is smart when it comes to people's emotions. Hear me out. He lived in the mountains for a long time, with only Ace as a friend, but he also lived 3 years without anyone because Ace left for the Grand Line, which gave him a lot of time to get stronger, but also interact with animals and the nature in general, giving him an animal-like instinct. We see this most often when he fights. He relies on his instincts to make the best judgments. But we also see it in day-to-day things, like when he eats, sleeps, and he's just basic like that. And even if he has animal-like instincts in fights, food, and sleep, you might argue that he doesn't have that in his judgment of people. But he does. Would you believe me if I told you that the story from episode 1 till the time skip happens in the span of 9 months? No one is able to trust a group of people in 9 months, no matter how much time you spend with each other, unless you really have a keen nose for people's intent, and Luffy definitely has that. Zoro. Make Luffy the Pirate King. Zoro is my favorite character in all of One Piece because of his simplicity. His drive to become the greatest swordsman comes from his promise with his dead childhood friend, Kuina. Yet, his dynamic with Sanji and his lack of direction make him funny in a way that characters like him usually are not. So, how does someone so single-mindedly focused on becoming the greatest swordsman become so attached to someone else's dream? I talk about Zoro in a lot more depth in my other video about him, but basically, he sets out on the journey with Luffy because he is saved by him. He then runs into Mihawk and learns that going to the Grand Line is his best bet to becoming stronger. Somewhere along the way, the whole crew slowly starts believing that Luffy can actually be the Pirate King, and Zoro is a part of that group. His simplicity makes him and Luffy be on the same wavelength on basically every issue. The best example of their simplicity is that they both would spout off becoming the best in their field to anyone who asks about them, without blinking an eye. And that, combined with their belief in each other's strength, we can see where the loyalty for Luffy comes from, and how that loyalty has turned Zoro being willing to lay down his life and pride if he thinks it will help Luffy become the Pirate King. Sanji. No one should starve. Sanji's secondary motive could have easily been about his respect and love towards women, but I didn't want to focus on that because I already talked about it in the other video. Instead, I want to talk about an underrated part of his character, which is his love for food and making sure nobody starves. There's a clip on YouTube that I keep going back to, which is a compilation of Sanji cooking. We see him cooking and making everything look really tasty, but also see his face light up when he finds new and interesting ingredients that he can cook with, because it gives him hope that the All Blue might actually be real. Sanji faces a unique hurdle of his dream might not existing. Becoming the strongest swordsman is a definite and achievable goal because Zoro can defeat Mihawk and say, "I am the strongest." Or finding the One Piece and becoming the Pirate King. Someone did it before, follow the same steps and Luffy can become the Pirate King. But nobody has ever visited or even confirmed the All Blue existing, which must be very frustrating for someone whose life ambition is to find it. And from his love of food comes his desire to feed any he comes across who needs a meal. The combination of him suffering under his father and having the experiences of feeding his pet mouse, along with him almost dying from starvation, led him to have a strong sense of feeding anybody that is hungry, whether they're able to repay him or not. Nami, become rich. We all forget how Nami is an amazing navigator whose main dream is to map the world, not becoming rich. This happens for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, her intro. You know how people say you can never make a first impression twice? Well, we see that very clearly with Nami. Up until Arlong Park, we don't see much about Nami other than the looting of money, which really leaves a lasting impression on you. It's hard to remember that she used to sneak into a bookstore and steal books and was really interested in maps before she ever stole money because of the second reason, continued gag. It is always a running gag on the show how she is constantly after money, and there are many good jokes like her blackmailing Zoro or her getting angry at Luffy because he gave away the Fishman treasure, but there are few mentions of her thinking or gaining new insights into mapping the world like we see with Luffy with the poneglyphs or something like that. And I do think it's very hard to show someone writing a book about a new part of the world, but her secondary motive of wanting to be rich is easy to show and funny to watch. But the constant hunt for money was born because of the debt she had to pay Arlong, not personal motivation. And that constant drive to get money is hard to let go once you have lived a majority of your life thinking about only making money. After the defeat of Arlong, she has finally turned her money-making skills for personal use, and I love that for her, because she gets to buy tighter and tighter swimsuits for me to watch and enjoy. Usopp surpassed his father. Yasopp is mentioned very little throughout the show, and we basically know nothing about what Usopp thinks of him. I doubt Luffy cares much about his father because he was surrounded by other family members like his grandpa, Ace, and Sabo, but Usopp's only family was his mother, and his habit of lying comes from the fact that he wanted to make his mom happy by making her think that his dad is coming back for them. His mother did say that she was still proud to have married Yasopp and doesn't regret anything, but does Usopp feel the same way? Choppa, communication skills. In the last video I made about Choppa, we see how Dr. Hirlook helped him become comfortable with himself, and Dr. Kurha teaches him to be a great doctor. But we also see him struggling to interact with any person that is not those two. However, as he goes on the journey with the Straw Hats, he learns to talk to new people and not feel insecure about his blue nose anymore. He improves his communication skills to the point where he's negotiating peace between animals and humans on another island during the time skip. We see this change most in his dynamic with Robin, or when he embraces the monster in him to improve the Rumble Ball. From Luffy to Choppa, each character had an arc dedicated only to introducing them as a character and making them as relatable as possible. This is why we see so many theories about Usopp and his lies, or Sanji and All Blue, but like less about Brook and Laboon reunion being significant. It becomes harder to spend so much time defining characters after Choppa because the story becomes much more complicated, and we see other aspects of the One Piece world like the warlords or the world government becoming much more relevant. Because of this, the pacing starts to speed up and there's a lower emphasis on establishing character before using them. Robin, finding the One Piece. The scene that defines Robin in my mind before Enies Lobby is her interaction with King Cobra, and she talks about how she doesn't want to find a weapon, but just wants to learn the history of the world. Luffy wants to find the One Piece because that is how he will become the Pirate King and be truly free, but Robin just wants to learn about the history of the world. It just so happens that the most secretive part of world history is on the poneglyphs. Let me give an example. The legend of Nolan the Liar is quite famous in North Blue, and we discover it during the Skypiea arc, but no one knows how much of his lies were actually true. I am sure she enjoyed discovering that his lies were actually facts and that she can go around the Grand Line and confirm them. Now, because of the way that Oda constructed the story, we assume that the history of the world is also the ultimate treasure, the One Piece. Oda, you goddamn genius, always fucking with our heads. But if the story wasn't built that way, she wouldn't be interested in the One Piece. And for a good chunk of the story, she's not. She's only looking for real poneglyphs. These are the 9 out of the 30 poneglyphs which only hold the history of the Void Century, but now she's actively looking for the road poneglyphs which hold the map to Laugh Tale. So in essence, Robin's secondary goal is quite similar to Zoro, and that is why I think Robin will end up with Zoro. That's right, I said it, Zoro x Robin for the win. Franky, be a man worthy of being Tom's disciple. In a lot of ways, Franky is the complete opposite of Choppa. He's a little too comfortable in his man-made body. He's a proud pervert who's comfortable showing off his man parts in public. Underneath all that pervy machinery though, is a man who is constantly working to be someone worthy of being his mentor's disciple. Franky's dream is to build a ship that will explore the ends of the world, and he continues to fulfill that dream with his constant modifications to Sunny. But what gets lost in that is his continuous pursuit to be a man. His memory of his mentor Tom and how he proudly stated that he built a ship for the Pirate King still lingers in Franky's mind. The lesson that Tom taught Franky about how to be proud of every creation he makes and how every person has their own worth, no matter how much society rejects them, are lessons he still carries to this day. We see this most when his fight with Senor Pink comes to its climax, and we see a mutual respect between them both. They both dress in a way that is rejected by society at large, but they are fine with their appearance because it keeps the memory of the ones they lost close to them. Brook. Make himself useful to the Straw Hats crew. Brook is the guy I had most difficulty defining because there is the least amount of information about him. There's more information on Law or Jinbei, who joins the crew much after Brook. His goal of meeting Laboon again is well known, and I think it'll be one of the most heartwarming moments in anime in 2045. But until then, Brook's goal is to be useful to Luffy and his goal. Brook has already lost everyone he held dear to him and was just looking for a way to get his shadow back from Moria. If he didn't get his shadow stolen and was able to do anything he pleased, what would he do? Nothing. Being found by Moria and having to fight for his shadow was a blessing in disguise, as he was found by Luffy and got a purpose for his second life. Jinbei. Autonomy and respect for fishmen. Jinbei has already lived a good chunk of his life and has explored the Grand Line under Fisher Tiger. Goals like becoming strong or traveling the world were already satisfied on his old journey as part of the Sun Pirates. But the goal he's focused on right now is to get the respect and autonomy for Fishman Island that both Fisher Tiger and former Queen wished for. His dream to be on Luffy's ship is a relatively new one. It was born after fighting together at Impel Down and Marineford, but he believes that gaining Fishman rights on the surface is also possible if he's part of the Straw Hats and believed that Big Mom is predatory in her nature, which would never help Fishman move forward. This is what makes Jinbei unique. Although his current personal goal is to be on Luffy's ship and help him become the Pirate King, he would have never joined if it would have somehow hindered the goal for Fishman equality. His sense of honor and duty that he carried from Fisher Tiger makes him always think about the Fishman Island first. Each and every Straw Hat is a strong-willed person that has seen a lot of shit happen in their life that we could never imagine happening to us. But overcoming their tragedies and going on a journey with Luffy are so intertwined that their motives and goals for the journey are also interconnected. And if you still think that One Piece is too long and needs to change, watch this video to see my solution to that problem.